then without further ado, let's go. As Per said, I'm a PhD student at the School of Global Studies, and I'm nearly finished with my thesis project that is titled "The Politics of Fish as Food: Sustaining the Unsustainable." You're all warmly welcome to the defense, which will be on April 25th this spring. But I'm also recently hired in another research project, Sustainable Seafood in Sweden's New Rural Development, led by Maris Gillette, also at the School of Global Studies. My personal background is as an agronomist, and before that I worked as a cook for many years. So I have a strong interest in food culture, and also food systems, trying to work in both ends of this vast and complicated system, both the very practical end of it and the more systemic challenges that it has. But before I started my PhD, I had started to think about local fish in Swedish gastronomy, because I had lived and worked in other countries in Europe and had seen a very different approach to how fish is incorporated in gastronomy than what we have in Sweden. I had also seen and experienced, like many of you, I presume, the enormous changes that has been going on within the food scene with a focus on local food in the last decades. In Sweden, there has been an absolute proliferation of local food in terms of heritage seeds and bread and whatever you can do with them, local beverages, meat, also vegetables. It's been a very prominent feature of modern gastronomy, I would say. But fish is very much missing in that development. And I was wondering, why is it so difficult with the fish? Why is it not incorporated in the same way? Because we have a long history of both fishing, and fish has been a very central part of the Swedish culinary heritage. And then, as I'm also inclined not only to theorize about these things, I also like to work practically and in a way that is aimed at producing change. So I also started to thinking about what can be done about it. So that's the broader background to this PhD thesis project, I would say. And I'm not going to talk that much about all of that now. It's a compilation thesis. There's 4 articles in it. One policy analysis looking at how fish is framed in Swedish policies, not yet published. And there's one article, Dead in the Water, where we looked at direct marketing of fish in Sweden and how that can contribute to sustainability, or how it does not contribute to sustainability. And then we have these 2 last articles highlighted here that deal with the Forgotten Fish project. And across these articles, I've applied a very broad and interdisciplinary environmental social science approach. I've used multiple methods, but broadly you could say that ethnography, policy analysis, and action research has been central to it. Yes. But the Forgotten Fish project itself did not start out as part of my PhD thesis, but I was involved in this civil society organization called Kålrotsakademien, or the Rutabaga Academy in English. That is organization that works to further the Swedish culinary heritage, and mainly through addressing the link between place, locality, but also the foodstuffs, how they are shaped by local culture, but also of local landscapes and local environments, that type of connection. Among its members, there's a mix of academics, but also many practitioners, such as chefs and food producers of different kinds, writers, food activists, and so on. So it's a very mixed gathering, and we have been involved in a number of different projects, from the very practical, like cultivating and propagating seeds and other plant material, to conserve and protect heritage varieties of both plants and animals. Also written a couple of books, doing seminar series and so on, debate articles, and quite often with a sort of quite political angle to it. This is an organization that is intent on producing change as well, which is why it's very fun to do stuff together with them. But at the very beginning of my PhD, I was asked to join, and specifically to do something with fish, because they had seen that something is missing here on the fish, and wanted somebody to do fishy stuff with them. And so we did, and I had was starting to get some type of understanding of the role of fish in the seafood system. And we talked a lot about this with the Kålrotsakademien, that how it has happened that fish has become one of our most globally traded food items, despite being a very sensitive type of food that is, if you're looking at quality, you want it fresh, not traded around the world for long periods of time. I had started to understand that the main management efforts and policies aimed at fishing had favored large scale over small scale fisheries. There was a vastly ongoing commodification and privatization of fish in quota systems going on that also affected this development. And crucially, that signals between ecosystems and consumers are very weak and asymmetrical, in the sense that from the demand side, you can put a lot of pressure on ecosystems, but the signals from ecosystems to consumers are not very evident. We have different types of systems to do this, like certification schemes and so on, but quite a bit of research points to that they are ineffective, and that they are also favoring large scale rather than small scale fisheries. And if we look specifically at Sweden, you can say that small scale fisheries are definitely in a pretty tight squeeze between degraded environments and unfavorable policies. And if we look at the consumption and production of fish in Sweden, we see that the vast majority of the fish that we consume is imported, and a very small proportion of the fish we catch ourselves in Sweden, that we land in Sweden, is used for human consumption. We export the majority for feed production, actually. And while this is going on, we have these quite large outtakes of fish, especially from the Baltic Sea, of the very same fish that small-scale fishers and artisanal food producers are really eager to have. And they have difficulties today of accessing this fish. And from the perspective of the Kålrotsakademien, we saw this as something that is threatening the Swedish culinary cultural heritage. So that's sort of the background, the problem description that we formulated for this project. We have a market that is dominated by very few species. They're mostly imported. There's a weak link between the local gastronomy, local fishers, and local fishing waters. I think I had a picture of a shrimp sandwich in the slide before this one, and on the west coast, that could absolutely signal some type of locally anchored gastronomy that's connected to both ecosystems and tradition. But you will find the same shrimp sandwich all along the Baltic coast. If you're at a picturesque harbor cafe, even at the inland lakes in Sweden, you will find these shrimp sandwiches. But it's getting more difficult to find a fried herring or a böckling, the smoked herring we have in the north. So these type of artisanal food products that are connected to a specific environment and a specific culture are disappearing in what could be described as a homogenizing trend in the food system. So we started to ponder, how can we explore and recreate this type of relationships between food, fish, fisheries, but also place and locality, environments. So we had a very simple project idea. That was basically, okay, we take fishers, we take cooks, we put them in a box and we shake that and we see what falls out. So by bringing these two expertises together, we wanted to explore the potential and the taste of our Swedish fishing waters. To see if we take the local as the vantage point, what can we see and experience in terms of taste, quality, seasonality, what fish are possible to fish for the small scale fisheries, what is not possible, and then to communicate this exploration but also the findings as widely as possible. So we decided to do five meetings in 5 different places in Sweden that each have a strong connection to fishery, a history of fishery. The first meeting was in Stockholm, and there we had fishers from both the archipelago outside of Stockholm, but also from inland lake fisheries from Mälaren and also from Hjälmaren present. There was a wide variety of fish at that meeting. Then we went to Spiken in southern Vänern, probably the biggest lake in Sweden, it must be. Famous for its Vendes roe fishery these days, but also a very rich ecosystem with many types of fish present. We in not really northern, but further north in Sweden, we went to Sundsvall, also an area where there's a rich tradition of coastal fishery, and despite them also having troubles, the northern coast in Sweden is where we maybe still have a bit of a backbone, a structure of small-scale fisheries that are still going on to some extent, even if they are facing hardships as well. And we went to Gotland, where we also cooperated with a local company, Gutefisk, that already work quite well with a wide variety of local fish. That was very inspiring. And lastly, Simrishamn, the most important fishing harbor in the entire Baltic Sea, in terms of landings and in terms of boats as well. But where we now have, I think, 2 active boats left in Simrishamn. So we gathered all the small-scale fishers we could find. Chefs were very easy to get to these meetings. They were eager. It was basically enough to call one, and after a couple of days, he would call back, or she would call back and say, "Yeah, I have these and these and these who also wants to come." The word spread quite fast, and with this background of the development we've had of local foods in Sweden, I think the chefs are very, very ready and very eager to do the same with fish. They can see as well that this is a missing piece in the gastronomic puzzle. So we had structured discussions with these participants at each meeting on what type of fish have we eaten historically, what type of fish is out there today, and is possible for the small-scale fisheries to catch and deliver, and what type of fish is gastronomically interesting for the chefs. And we produced 5 short films. I'll get back to these later, one from each meeting. And the main method, I would say, for these meetings or workshops, or what you would like to call them, was a tasting of the fish that we did, inspired by how you taste wines. So we had a pretty simple protocol, but we tasted all the fish, all the species that we could get, first raw, and then cooked in a similar manner to sort of find out what are the base characteristics of these fish. And this came from the chefs, who said that, yeah, sure, we can compose dishes or experiment in many types of ways with these fish, but where we are right now, we know so little of them. We do not know what are their base characteristics, how they're best put to use in a gastronomic context, and so on. So this was a first step in exploring that, one could say. This is what it looked like. This is from the Stockholm meeting. The raw fish tasting here. We had all the fish on display and then cut up like sashimi, I guess you could say. So just plain, not even salt, to try it. And this was fascinating because the fishers found this interesting, this sort of focus on taste, and the chefs were so eager to get into this. They were absolutely crazy about doing this. And I think that was important for the fishers to see that type of appreciation and interest in the food that they produce. Even these fishes that are normally completely outside of economic transactions or circulations. And I have some of the quotes that we got out from the tastings here. Let's see if I can just move around. I can't do that. Yeah, like that. I'll try to translate this into English. So we have quotes like raw bream has notes of grass, mushroom, mineral, beach, oyster mushroom. The texture is firm. The lingering taste is long, nutty, and it is reminiscent of the metallic notes of European flat oysters. We have sutare. Let's see, what can the name of sutare be in English? Tench, I think. I think it's tench. It's a fish you historically had in ponds. So in a type of historic aquaculture, lives close to the bottom feeder. So tench has a delicate texture and bite, a very deep and full-bodied taste. Who would have guessed? And we have Sikleja, that's Vendes, that we in Sweden normally only use for its roe, which is very exclusive, but the fish is mainly discarded or used as feed or to make biogas out of or something like that. The Vendes has a bouquet. The raw Vendes has a bouquet of hay and grass. Has a mild and fine sweetness. Cooked, it's a fantastic and very elegant food fish. So these are just some examples of the type of descriptions that we got out from this exploration. Here's something of a list of the species. I don't think all are included, but most of them. Some are still, to a degree, food fish, but none of them are common in in the contemporary food system. It's I would say that you would rarely find any of these except maybe herring at your in your local store, and the herring is getting. You're not finding the local herring anymore, at least, even if you can get imported herring. So we tried to disseminate this journey, this exploration, as widely as possible. So we ourselves did 5 movies. This is our lovely film crew. And we also communicated as much as we could to local and national media, newspapers, televisions, and radio. And there was quite a big interest from media, I would say. This is a project that has... I'm still getting calls about it because it hit a note that resonated with a lot of people. Then again, you can say that the angle that was most commonly applied in media was that of star chefs cooking weird fish. So it's maybe not really what we wanted to communicate, but an interesting finding to see how it was handled in the media. Here are just some of the examples. The films we made, you can all find them at the Kålrotsakademien's YouTube page. We have, I can't see the top one now because, let's see, yeah. Talking about roach, a fish you hardly eat in Sweden, I would say. It's but it's we found out that it has one of the best caviars out there. Equally, smelt or nos in Swedish has a fantastic caviar, but it's in itself also a really nice fish and something that we think could be used as a premiere in the spring, like we do with asparagus or such. Third film, we have 2 very skilled chefs here who talk about how you can make a type of marine foie gras from the liver of lake. Yeah, what can that be in English? It's lota in Latin. Burbot, I think it's burbot. Yeah. And then we have Mattias Dahlgren here, also a famous chef and big part of the project, who talks about round goby, an invasive species in the Baltic Sea that's turned out to be really delicious. And then the last film has the title of that all the boats in the southern Baltic are now for sale, speaking of the desperate situation that small-scale fisheries are in there. So please have a look if you're interested in this. So some of the achievements of the project. Like I said, there was a very big media interest from both national and local media. Many spin-offs that happened surprisingly. Maybe the most surprising to me was a request to do something on this topic at the Baltic Sea Festival, a classical music festival held in Stockholm every year. So we arranged a tasting of the forgotten fish there with Stefan Eriksson, a cook and chef restaurateur based in Stockholm. And that was very interesting to do something around fish in a cultural setting where you would not expect it, and also by hazard, I think a producer from Swedish national television got wind of this and made a short film about this tasting and about the project that is also available still at SVT Play, Bortglömda fiskar. One very interesting experience working with fishers and chefs is that they're very practical and they're doers. If we had a meeting the next week, we could see some of the fish that we had worked with show up on menus. both in regular restaurants and in the more sort of fine dining setting. I'll get back a little bit to that later. Norsrom, the smelt caviar I talked about before. One fisher who is also an artisanal food producer won gold in 2023 with his smelt caviar. Amazing, bright yellow caviar, small eggs that were really crispy and super nice. Together with all the participants in the project, we wrote a debate article where we protested the massive industrial fishery in the Baltic. It was published in Dagens Nyheter, one of the largest newspapers in Sweden, on Christmas Eve 2023. And as I guess that most of you know, herring is a very central part at the Christmas smörgåsbord. So we thought it was an apt time to draw attention to that we risk losing this very, very, very important part of our culinary heritage. We haven't really done research on this. I've just begun talking to fishers and cooks that participated, but we see signs of very, very interesting cooperation among fishers and chefs. They're doing business, they're buying and selling fish, they're buying and selling these forgotten species, but they're also doing other things together. They're doing pop-up dinners. Fishers are coming to the restaurants to introduce the food and the fish that they eat and talk about their fishery and so on. So we see quite thick and reciprocal relations forming from this context. Here's some pictures. This is from the taste testing at the Baltic Sea Festival, and also a photo of the tasting menu from Seafood Gusto, probably one of the most fine dining venues in Sweden at the moment, where several products that we discovered through the project actually entered the menu. Okay, so I know I was supposed to keep a sort of popular approach to this, but I would like to talk a little bit of how we theorized this as well. So for me, it has been important to think about this as an action research project and to understand how can this type of setup be a way to work to produce change in the seafood system. And we have one of the articles, the one that's published, written by me and my colleague Maris Gillette. We theorized this with the help of Karl Polanyi's classic book, The Great Transformation, and his concept of disembedded and embedded economies. And very, very shortly, you can say that his argument is that capitalism will disembed economies from nature, from environments, from communities, and that if it's unrestrained, this will produce massive difficulties, both environmentally and socially. And that will cause a counter movement to seek to re-embed economies into communities and environments. So we theorized this as an effort to re-embed fish in local communities and environments. And as you all know, in social science, nothing is ever clear and simple. So we found a lot of tensions and also contradictions in how this re-embedding played out. Mainly that the type of embedding that was going on and sought after was defined differently by the various stakeholders that participated in the project. And as such, it reflected different values and perspectives on the role of fish in the food system. So while all participants, I would say, held a very shared vision that the seafood system we have in Sweden now is flawed. It produces very negative outcomes, and it doesn't deliver an interesting gastronomy. They differed in how they looked at embedding. And we found that the Kålrotsakademien as such had a very radical vision, I would say, to re-embed fish in both communities and ecologies. For the small-scale fishers, we developed a concept to describe their needs that we call communities of concern, with inspiration from Snyder and St. Martin. And it was very clear that the small-scale fisheries participant felt abandoned by society at large, specifically by Swedish fishery management, and were looking for somebody that cared about their situation, that found what they do valuable, and so on. And that was a clear outcome of this project, that was a very important thing for them. They also wanted to find a way to profit from fish that they catch in their nets today, but that they can't, there's no demand for it. So of course there was also a monetary interest in that. For the chefs, they were very, very interested in fish with a local identity and with specific gastronomic qualities or characteristics that they could work with in the kitchen, but also communicate to their guests. But it didn't always have to be anchored in the very local vicinity where they were active. Say for a chef in Stockholm, it was equally interesting with fish from Gotland that had local identity, or from Sundsvall that had local identity. That local identity could readily travel, in their view, but as long as it was there, it was something that heightened the value of the fish and of the gastronomic experience. We theorized this using a distinction between local and locality fish from a book by Goodman and others from 2012, where they say that the local fish is the one that's embedded in local communities and local environments, and the locality fish is the fish that can be given a local identity, that can travel, but can also be incorporated into the sort of the mainstream capitalist market. Yeah, and back to this picture that I think I put here to illustrate sort of the communal spirit that was very important in this project. We had a lot of fun together, and it was great seeing fishers and cooks and all the others of us that are interested in this meeting and creating this what we call a community of concern. And that's a concept that I find very interesting to continue to work with. And we're doing so now in the new research project, Sustainable Seafood for Sweden's new rural development. We are starting up again to see, okay, can we gather this gang? Can we use the context of cooking, eating, and having these sort of sensory experiences together as a tool to create and broaden these communities of concern? And one of the avenues that I would like to explore here is that, okay, it was quite easy to in some instances at least, to get the fishers and the cooks to connect. But I think that we need a wider societal interest in supporting a small scale and sustainable fishery in Sweden. And that's for me that's a question that needs more research, I would say. Okay, thank you very much. There are some references at the end here for those of you that want to look into them. But besides that, I'll just say thank you, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.